So, been doing quite a lot of walking recently, which is good. Therapeutic, if nothing else. Like the good old days, eh? Just making a wee video here. Guessing in and of itself is a form of therapy. Even though I know that barely anybody's listening. Let's just film honestly. Obviously I've kept this channel throughout the years separate from my other channel, like my political channel, so to speak, or call it whatever. As a consequence of that, obviously, it means that vast majority of people that I was initially part of a community with will never see this. Which I think is probably a good thing, I guess. It's just my personal thoughts from time to time. You know, for years, I've had this channel since 2008. Still in fucking school back then, man. But speaking of said community, I think one of the hardest things that I've had to do recently was sort of say goodbye to it. Now, admittedly, I didn't want to, but I had no option, really, because obviously my behaviour online, like when I've been drunk, don't get me wrong, like, it's not like I was being egregious or words to that effect, but I was embarrassing myself, making things a lot worse for myself. But the real kick in the balls, in all honesty, has been and continues to be the fact that it's always been booze. So I recently broke up with my ex just about a month ago now, almost a month ago, and ended in a fucking really bad way. And it's not the first time that something bad has happened between the pair of us. There's been a few occasions, and that's not to suggest that I'm 100% in the wrong in some of these instances, but they have occurred regardless. And it's no a blame game as far as I'm concerned. I've kept my mouth shut about things between us because it's nobody's business, really. But top of that, it's more, I just don't really want to intensify the situation. But when I look back at it, it was always booze. Everything that happened between me and her was booze this year in terms of everything that went wrong. And I used to take her here. This is my favourite wee place, Loch Moy. It's about 10-15 minutes down the road from Inverness, if that. Always been the booze that's created the problems. And ironically enough, it's the booze that have created the problems after the fact as well, you know. So, that's why I've had to sort of accept, for now at least, things are not going to be how they were just a month ago. which is it is a difficult thing to come to terms with. But it brings me to the point of addiction, I guess, because this is the thing that actually sort of frustrates me, is that my ex, on a multitude of occasions, pointed out to me that I was drinking a bit too much. Like when I was in her company, I was drinking again this year. Like, you know, I'd wake up on like the Saturday morning and I'd have a beer, and they kept brushing it off as hair of the dog. And it wasn't helped, of course, by the fact that we'd stopped doing the things that we used to love doing together. See, back in 2023, the pair of us would come to places like Lochmoy. I've taken her around the entirety of Lochmoy. I've taken her all over the Highlands of Scotland, and it just came to a standstill. And we didn't really do much when the roles reversed and I did most of the travelling. There was the odd time we did go places, don't get me wrong, but we always ended up in fucking pubs. Just kept drinking. It was almost like we were enabling one another. And that's not to imply that she's an alcoholic. By the way, I'm just saying, we weren't helping one another in that regard. And I think we should have probably have had crisis talks well before things escalated to the point that they did and have done previously. Regardless, addiction, it's not something that I think that I suffer from, like in the most literalist of, it's not even a word, in the most literal sense. But I most certainly have a problem with turning to these things, turning to alternatives when things have gone wrong in my life. And it could be the most mundane of things, but I still do it regardless. So, I obviously got with my ex in 2022. We started speaking a lot in October, November time of 2022, but in August of 2022 is when I had the biggest wobble in my fucking life, because obviously what had been going on between me and my unborn, he was born by that point, my son. The only reason that I know he's definitely my son, despite it maybe appearing as if he isn't, given the actions taken by my penultimate ex. Like, I have seen, at the very beginning, I did see a few photos of him, and he's the double of me, and he's got the same fucking hair as my mother. So there is that, but regardless, like, I was going off the rails, like, majorly off the rails, and I started to have really dark thoughts that wouldn't go away. I was drinking, I was taking drugs, I was unemployed. I binged and I pissed away all of my savings that I'd accumulated. And bear in mind that before this shit started, I'd been teetotal for years. I was 21 when I stopped taking drugs. And it was probably the same year when I was 21 that I stopped drinking. I hadn't touched a drop of drink until 24 years of age when the lockdown started. And I never turned again to drugs until I was 25. So I've been doing quite good. And I had managed to build up some savings as time went on. And I fucking blew it all away when the stuff started to become complicated with my penultimate ex. Which brings me to 2022. Yeah. What a numbers, eh? Numeracy was never my strong point, but regardless. Ended up quite friendly as time went on with my ex. And things were good, but not perfect, obviously. And did kind of wobble a bit in terms of veering back to my old habits. Kind of. You know, I was with her every weekend, apart from like the fourth weekend of the month. And I used that weekend to sort of make all the videos that I hadn't been making throughout the rest of the week. But I obviously ended up sort of dabbling in substances as this shit was going on, which caused a bit of a strain between the pair of us. We then fast forward to 2023. Something bad happened between me and her. However, out the other side of that, I promised her that I would stop taking drugs, and I did. I did. However, booze got in the way very quickly after that, as I had been working at a job for the best part of a year, maybe just over a year at this point, and my pay was shit. It was atrocious. And by this point, me and her were arguing all the time. And as a consequence, I ended up quitting my job. And it just brought this entire year to a fucking standstill in terms of what we could do, when we could see each other. You know, there was a couple of months where I didn't see her 4 months. And as a consequence of that, I began to slowly turn to alcohol again. I was stressed at the fact that I couldn't see her. I was stressed at the fact that I had barely any fucking money as well. And the arguments between the pair of us became worse and worse and worse and worse and longer and longer and more frequent, to the point where we were arguing multiple times a week. During this period, I should say, I was drinking more and more. I was beginning to end up replicating and imitating the identical pattern of behaviour that I had been, undertaking just a few years prior when I was going through the bullshit with the mother of my son. There was multiple red flags that she herself witnessed. And she did, to her credit, bring it up quite a few times when we were arguing and on the occasion trying to express concern. She often used to say to me that she didn't want me to end up going back the way that I was. I don't know why I've done this the last few years on and off. I really don't get it. I don't understand why when things go wrong in my life, I turn to booze. I don't get it. I don't know why I get tempted to go back to drugs. I think partly it's boredom. Because whenever these periods in my life do occur, it's not like I'm busy doing things. I'm not. It's sad to think that like 99% of my problems have been generated by alcohol. Self-infliction, compulsive behaviour, embarrassing myself over and over and over again. Horrible things that I've said and or done. And I've had a choice to make this month. Do I spiral and justify the spiral by fuck it, oh my life's shit, like what's going on, let's just spiral, justify it? Or do I try to put things into place to change? I have to go back to how I used to be. You know, my wee channel here, there's like wee raps on that channel, this channel, from like 10 years ago. Then there's a few from when I was like 24, 25, a few from my early 20s as well. I've clearly been unhappy. And the only two periods in my life where I felt happy was when I found out I was going to be a dad, and when I got with my ex that first year. Genuinely the happiest times of my life, which suggests to me that I'm at the very bare. I'm human. I do feel. I just never felt so alone at the moment. I miss my ex. I love my ex. And I have to deal with the fact that substances have fucked things up. They do take control of your life. They do. And the issue is, this is how addictions are born, I guess. You don't realise. You know? You don't realise it's happening to you until it's too late. That's why like interventions exist, etc. If you don't realise that you've got a problem, how the fuck are you supposed to fix it? I want to go back to the life that I had without booze. Preferably with my son in my life eventually. I don't know how the fuck I'm going to go about that. That is a way long away. But I don't know. I want to be the guy that I was a few years ago, before things started to go completely wrong. Don't need booze. I certainly don't need anything else, substance-wise. I just want... Well, at the moment I still want my ex back. Whether or not that'll ever happen, I really don't know. But I do need to come to terms with the fact that this can't go on. The latter half of my 20s have just been plagued on and off with issues. Mentally speaking. Lost the best thing could have happened to me, I think. The best thing that I can do for myself, and the best thing that you can do for yourself, if you are in any way, shape or form like me in terms of struggling with issues, is to fucking work on yourself, man. That you've got. It's just hard. They go on about a support network. That's making it harder for me because I don't have one. Be honest. Everything's gone. It doesn't mean it's gone forever, I don't know.